him calling out metal songs in the middle and me playing them in the middle of the Uprise song. So like we'd be playing Uprise and he'd be like Slayer, and I'd be like dun, 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 dun. Like I was a dick. Like I actually now feel bad about it.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. The Dillinger Escape Plan is an amazing band from New Jersey, and if you're listening to this episode and don't know who they are, I don't know what to fucking tell you. You should know who they are, so I'm not going to do any kind of intro except to say that this band is fucking amazing. They are local Jersey boys, which is crazy because they grew up like, I don't know, fucking 20 minutes or 30 minutes down the road from where I lived in Jefferson, New Jersey. I wanted to get Ben on the show to talk about the scene, and he was really easy to get a hold of, actually. I just messaged him and said, I've got this podcast that talks about the Jersey scene, and I want to talk about how you guys started. And he was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. And he's an extremely awesome person, and he was really easy to talk to, and just hearing him just be excited about that time in this interview is fucking great. So I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this one. So I don't want to delay this any longer. I do have a couple things I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to list out the things that we talked about. His farm, Matt from Uprise, their drummer Chris Pennie, Skaters World, Steve Evetts, Chris Badami, or Badami, however you say your last name. I just say Badami. Mike Patton, playing a basement show in New Brunswick, and a ton more. Go check out Ben's Patreon for his farm. The link is going to be in the show notes and on the episode page on my website. This goes to help support the farm that he has right now with his wife that we talk about in the beginning of the episode. And the video that he did for his Patreons is amazing, especially when he starts talking about the animals. Real quick before we start, I've got a new sponsor. Go check out houseofmerch.com, which is run by Sean from Lane Meyer. You can find a ton of shirts from your favorite bands that are large bands and larger bands. He didn't really give me a list, so I'll have a list next week. The prices are super low compared to other websites out there, and you can take an extra 10% off by using the promo code SCENE, like this was the scene, so SCENE, not SEEN. So you should go do that. Again, use promo code SCENE. You get extra 10% off on merch that's already very inexpensive. Thank you to all the Patreon supporters who keep this podcast going. All of you are fucking amazing, as well as the people who have donated one time or have bought a bunch of merch. If you want to be part of the Cool Kids Club, then just go to thiswasthescene.com where you can choose one of the three if you want to. And if not, one way you can help is to tag someone in the Instagram posts I do or the Facebook posts, or you can leave a comment. You can leave me some stars on the reviews. You could choose how many you want. Some podcasts say to leave you 5, but I will leave that to your discretion. Finally, check out tonight's live online show that starts at 8 p.m. in the North Jersey Pop Punk 1994 to 2002 group. The performing acts will be Sam from High Strung, Dave from Taxi Cab Samurais, Josh from Right Ternetti, Tom, who will be playing some Face First and Houston Call songs. I'll be playing some Lane Meyer and Arcade Academy songs. Heath from Midtown will be playing, obviously, Midtown songs and Census Fail songs. It says Midtown and Census Fail on the flyer, so Heath, I don't know if you're actually going to be playing Census Fail songs, but I'm just going to say that you are, so no pressure. And we got Dave from Weston playing some music, so it's going to be fucking epic, and you should go watch it because the last one was fucking fantastic. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I usually don't do a lot of research on bands because I remember them back in the day, but but you guys have so much interviews. I don't want to ask you like the same shit that everyone's, it's like I don't want you
Well,
to
I
ask
appreciate the effort, yeah, because it's more fun when you can talk about new things for sure.
Yeah, because I can imagine you've been asked the same question 1,000 times, like where'd you get the name? And I will probably ask like, the whole structure of this is going back in time, when you got into music, how to let into the scene, and kind of just like hovering around like the late 90s into the early 2000s, because that's how the whole podcast started. But I mean, so basically like you guys have come up so many times. I mean, the band is very well known, but just your involvement or just growing up in Jersey, this will be like episode 96, I think. And there's all these little conversations where they're like, yeah, and this little known band later became Dillinger Escape Plan. And
Right, yeah.
so it's like I had an interview with Brian Carley from Penfold. Do you remember them?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because he said that you guys went to a college together. God damn, what's the college you went? Madison.
Yes. Fairleigh Dickinson?
Fairleigh Dickinson. Yeah, because he was talking about he was in computer class and he was getting like he said he's like, yeah, and I turned around and this guy there, his name's Ben, and he was in this band called, what was the first band? Arcane?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, he's like, he has a band called Arcane, and then they became Dillinger Escape Plan. I was like, okay. And then a lot of people have talked about Obsessions. And
Oh my God. Who did you talk to that talks about Obsessions?
Oh, this whole
Are you
podcast,
reading it?
this whole thing started. It just focused on the Jersey scene. So the first 28
Man,
episodes,
I
was
got to go
talking-
back and listen to all these.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you guys have come up a lot, but you also, because you grew up in Morris Plains, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up in Jefferson, and I lived in Morristown
Cool.
before I moved down to Raleigh. I've only been here for a couple of years. But,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'm all based in Jersey, but so yeah, I kind of
Right.
threw a lot at you. But a couple things before we start, though. I love where in Jersey is your farm?
It's in central Jersey. So it's in a place called Flemington. A lot of
Yeah.
people know this area, like Lambertville or Clinton, or,
It's on 78.
it's not far from Princeton. It's kind of more like off of 202, 31.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not far from Princeton's, I guess, really. What most people know, it's like 20 minutes from Princeton. But I pretty much describe it, it's right in the middle of Philly and New York. So it's pretty much the same distance to Philly and New York. It's right in the center.
Yeah, I've got through Flemington 1,000 times. My dad, he lives in Delaware, so I used to drive from when I lived in Hoboken. I would take fucking 31 all the way down to 95 and take the
Yeah,
freeway
that's
down.
like the shortcut to like the Philly or Delaware area, like the scenic route. You go through like Flemington, right?
Yeah, it's the non-toll route.
Right. And it's funny, I just found out that Tucker from Thursday lived here, grew up here. So
Which one?
we were just
Wait,
talking.
is he was a guitar player,
drummer.
right? Or a drummer?
The drummer. Yeah, the
Okay.
drummer from Thursday.
Yeah, there's yeah, I was talking
Told
to
me some good stories.
yeah, I just did an interview with Dan from Lifetime, and we were talking about the reunion show they did in like 2005, 2006, and I was saying how that show, it was like the guys from Thursday were in it, and it was like, remember Jeff Rickley was next to me, and like I mean, this is how I remember it. I could be completely wrong, but I remember looking over, I was like, oh shit, that's Jeff from Thursday, and we were like, just like, fucking Lifetime's playing right now. We were like freaking out.
Yeah,
Incredible.
totally. Absolutely. Well, it's interesting for me because, a lot of the bands that came out and did well were kind of even younger guys from me, whether it's like Ben from Gaslight, Benny Horowitz from Gaslight Anthem. He was like kind of the young kid that was putting on shows and following all the bands around and like that, and then did really well for himself with Gaslight. And then Thursday kind of came up after Lifetime and after all that stuff. And, so I see a lot of these bands that ended up being massively successful, at least within this world. I remember them as like just fanboys and stuff like that, of these Jersey bands.
Well, like Ben from Armor for Sleep, he used to be in this band called Random Task, and then like I talked to him about that, and actually interviewed Benny, and we just talked about the Manville Elks Lodge the whole time. We didn't even talk about Gaslight. It was just
Nice,
like
right.
him being 15 years old and putting on shows. Like,
Yeah, he came over to my house the other day, actually.
oh no shit.
Well, pre-corona.
Oh yeah, I was like, you guys are really breaking the rules there from the 6.
Yeah, no, he brought his family over and checked out my animals and stuff, hung out.
That's so cool. Yeah, everyone listen. So Ben's got a farm that he's on where I saw the video. It's on Patreon, and basically the story was you and your wife bought this house from someone, and they were going to take the animals, and all of a sudden it just turned into, from what the story was, it turned to weeks to months, and then you guys acquired these animals. So you basically made it kind of a sanctuary for, what would be the term? Like abused animals, or just like it just. How would
Not
you
necessarily, just they're all rescues,
Rescues,
So,
that's it.
some of them were literally just rescued because they were kind of just here, and they didn't really have a place to go. So we just kept them and took on the challenge, and then we continued to bring in new animals, and some of them we brought in some two goats there was a hoarder, this older lady who was just letting these goats, breed and multiply and wasn't really taking care of them. And so they got confiscated. And so we were able to take two of them. So they weren't like abused necessarily, but they weren't socialized. They weren't that healthy. But then we rescued some horses and a mule from an actual auction, which involved us actually buying them because they were going to go to the meat market, in which the owners would have gotten some money. So in order to get them, we had to pay something to keep them from going to the meat market. But there's these Amish farms that have these like mini horses and things like that. And when the animals don't get adopted or bought, I guess I should say when the animals don't get bought, they usually go to the meat market. And so even the horses and stuff like that. So we got 4 horses and a mule that way. So those were, I guess, rescues, and they were in pretty bad shape and some of them seemed a little abused. So
Yeah, one had like strangle mark or like had when the video
yeah
horses.
Yeah, it's called strangles. So it's actually just an illness, and it's like the lymph nodes almost like burst out of the skin, and it could be from just eating poorly and stuff like that. So that was took a while to get that horse back in shape for sure.
Is this something you did? I mean, we're definitely gonna talk about the jersey and stuff, but like, is this something that you like kind of had as part of your lifestyle growing up, like being a part of like helping animals, or is this something where at this point in your life now it was just, oh wow, I never saw this coming, and now from that point
I never saw this coming. 100% never saw this coming. Look, I always loved animals.
Yeah.
I always wanted to go to the petting zoo and play with. If I saw a goat, it was amazing. Or I always wanted pets. My parents wouldn't really let me, so I had little pets. Like the fishes and the hamster and all that stuff. Anything to keep me from getting a dog. But I never had real animals, and I always wanted them. Then when I grew up and went off my own, I got some dogs and things like that. But I never ever dealt with farm animals or farming or even just any kind of hands-on real work. I was on tour for 20 years before that. My dad was in academia and wasn't very handy, and so all this is very new to me. And while I've always had that dream of hey, retire to a farm, I never thought it would actually happen, and especially not at this point in my life.
That's the crazy thing about Jersey. It's like you can be in the city, and then 30 minutes later, you can be in the fucking farm area, or it's just
totally. And that's what people don't realize. People they make fun of it, the Garden State. They're like, oh, the garbage state. And I'm like, well, it really is a beautiful place with so much to offer.
Yeah, I still, people to this day, they'll say go at exit. I'm like, okay, it's old. We get it. That's the only thing you know about the fucking state. So.
Well, it's funny. I always say look, I get it. Most people fly into Newark and then drive to New York, and that's their experience with New Jersey. And that's not New Jersey. That's New York's fart. It's like that space between Newark Airport and New York is just, it's not New Jersey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So I get it, but that's not New Jersey.
Yeah, like me growing up in Jefferson, it's the middle of fucking sticks. It's right by West Milford, and it's just all farmland, and then by Sussex County, which is scary. So, but yeah, cool, man. Well, so like I said, just talk about the scene, talk about the band and how you guys get together. But I just want to go back and start from an early age. I'm sure you might have been asked this question 1,000 times, but what was that moment where growing up you heard a song or band or saw something on MTV where you were like, fuck, man, music just completely grabbed your attention?
Let's see. My first concert was Journey.
Nice.
My first real concert was Journey with Steve Perry, and I remember the energy of a giant stadium like that was something just uncomparable. Obviously, I was young and there didn't have much to compare it to yet, but there certainly was an energy in that crowd all singing those songs that I never experienced before. That was unlike anything else ever.
How old were you?
I was probably maybe 10 or something like that. But I guess, let me think, MTV. I mean, I do have to say, like, it's pretty cliche, but like Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit was a huge one.
Yeah.
But I was listening before that. I was listening to like really heavy metal and death metal and things like that. So I'd watch like Headbangers Ball and things like that, and that was really influential on me. And I'd wait until like 3 a.m. or the end of the whole thing where they play one really, really heavy video. So like at the end of the night, the last video would be like Morbid Angel or something, like something really heavy. So I always kind of looked at that last video as an opportunity to learn about some kind of new subgenre in the heavy music. And then you'd see some of the artists that ended up being big grunge artists kind of surface on Headbangers Ball first, like Stone Temple Pilots or Nirvana or something like that. And then it kind of like get upstream to MTV proper, Yeah. So I remember like Nirvana and Soundgarden and things like that having a huge impact on me because they were somehow popular, but also so cool and innovative. And like Kurt Cobain's voice was not typical of anything you hear on the radio at all. I remember not knowing how to describe it. I was like, it's kind of like a heavier Sting or something. Like I remember thinking in my head, like I can't figure out what it is. That voice, the scratchy voice, So I don't know, man. I probably went down a similar trajectory of people in my generation and my age in music, and but interestingly enough, a really big one for me that I think most people want to know more about, like my punk rock and thrash and that side of things, and a big one was Suicidal Tendencies for me.
Okay.
So
aren't you playing
because
with them
I was
now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I play with them.
What was it about them though?
Well, I was a skater. I was skateboarding a lot, and I was in the 80s. There were skateboarders that listened to two kinds of music. Really, you were either listening to like thrash and punk, or you were listening to new wave industrial. And I was listening to new wave industrial. I was like into Depeche Mode and The Cure and Nitzareb and Susie and the Banshees and that stuff. And then you'd have these skaters who were listening to Suicidal Tendencies and punk and stuff like that. So there was this half pipe that I would go to in my town with the older kids who were skating on, and I'd try to get in there and get my turn every now and again, and they'd be playing Suicidal Tendencies and stuff like that. So I remember getting the tape and listening to it and hearing the guitar solos and being like, whoa, this person is just literally just shredding guitar like over the entire song. Like, this is nuts, Yeah. So I'd started playing guitar already, and I was learning songs like, Smoke on the Water or something like that, and it was just crazy. It was next level. I wore the tapes out. I could see myself looking at my cassette player with the tape in there, listening to it, hearing it start to slow down and wobble because it was like getting worn out so much. So that was definitely a big band for me. And so, when Mike Muir from Suicidal called me, even though I had pretty much decided to not tour anymore and stuff like that, I kind of had to do it.
Yeah. That's kind of cool because, just even you mentioned in Industrial, because, I saw the video that you guys played. You guys played Wish with Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
That one time.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan. And, like, when I saw that, I was like, Jesus Christ, man. It's cool seeing people from in any band in general, like, getting big and getting to share a stage or something like that. But, like, to see, there's always something about, a Jersey band that made it, and then you're watching them do something like that. I've seen that a bunch of times with like that, or I saw like Brian, the Gaslight Guys playing with Bruce Springsteen coming up on stage, and you just kind of like, it almost feels like a win for you, because you're like, all right, home state, local guys got it, made it big, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have like, when you were like, I remember when I was younger, I got into, me and my buddies would play like Bon Jovi and shit, and we put on these fake concerts for our family, our parents and stuff, which I've mentioned many times, and it was fucking murder for our parents. They're like, God, this sucks. But like, did you as a kid, when you saw Journey and then you're hearing like Suicidal Tendencies, was there a point in that time where you kind of triggered in your brain, like, I want my life to eventually like look like that. I want to be in a band and be that big one day.
I don't remember thinking that. I was very shy. I definitely had a hard time making friends. School was hard for me. I wasn't really into sports. So it was more like it chose me. I mean, it just happened to be what I was good at and what came easier to me. So, it kind of chose me more than I chose it. And then eventually in high school, I was kind of like the best guitar player in high school without really trying. I mean, there wasn't that much competition. And I think, probably the older guy that was awesome, like graduated and so I was just the guy that made bands, that
you played like the coffee houses and all that shit back then?
We were like I remember doing like a church lock-in.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Which was pretty amazing for like a Jewish kid to be locked in overnight at this church and like do prayers and talk about Jesus just so I could play a few songs. That was amazing. Which I was totally fine with because I got to play, Iron Maiden cover and a Queensryche song, whatever else we were doing.
You're like, yeah, Jesus, cool, sure.
Yeah, we would play the Ginty Carnival in Morristown and stuff like that.
Where in Morristown was that?
So if you remember, in Morristown, there was like all the way down. If you go all the way through town, eventually you got to like there was like a park and there was like stables.
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of thing. It was over around there in that park, Ginty Field, I think it was called.
Yeah, it's like South Street. Take that all the way down or something.
Yeah, if you took South Street all the way down, you'd eventually get to that place, Ginty Field, and then there was past King's and all that.
Yeah, King's still there, not the A&P though.
It is. It is.
I used to. Yeah, I was living right next to the A&P. That's right down the street from the courthouse, so I know that area very well. People listening are like, "What the fuck are they talking about?" It's like, hey,
I know
it's a Jersey thing.
Funny.
So we're gonna talk about it. Where was the skate park that you went to, the half pipe?
It was in like Mars Plains. It was just down some street. This old kid down the street had a half pipe, and everyone would go there. And I remember when they weren't home, they'd put a chain and lock it up because everyone would just go there and skate, which was a huge liability. And I remember everyone just cutting the chain and skating anyway. And now as an older person, I'm like, that's fucked up. Like we were just going in someone's yard, cutting the chain and skating on their, like breaking our necks in someone's backyard.
Who was the skater from Jersey? I'm gonna progress here, but God damn it, I was friends with his sister. Tim.
Tim Connor.
Tim O'Connor. Yeah. His sister was like my neighbor for a while. This was years ago when I was living in Morristown. And she's like, yeah, my brother Tim. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What the fuck? Tim O'Connor? Did you skate with him like back then and like Par Hills and all that?
I kind of wasn't skating anymore at that point, really. And, he was younger than me and we were in high school. We were both in Morristown High at one point together.
Yeah.
And he was so good, man. There was this guy, Poncho, who was actually like a midget skater. Pro skater, and he was living with Tim at one point and went to my high school, and he was so good, man. But I remember it was amazing because he was so low to the ground, he'd like wipe out and you wouldn't even tell. He'd just kind of like put his feet down and jump back up. Like it was like wicked stuff. And I remember him just hitting on chicks, and like he was just such a ladies man, It was pretty rad to see that.
So how old were you when you like went to, because you were pretty involved in like the Jersey scene, like yeah. So like what was like that point that introduced you to it?
Well, again, I was more into metal and things like that when I was younger. In Mars County, there wasn't really at that time like a hardcore scene or an underground DIY scene. Most of it was happening in South Jersey, New Brunswick, and like Red Bank and by the beach, and there was all kinds of like scenes going on south, but there wasn't much going on. So we were doing, like as you said, playing up sessions, playing metal stuff, playing wherever we could. And
but like talk about we were in high school, but then when you graduated, is that when you started going to like, is that when you got into a band and started playing shows, or like where was that? I'm kind of like just trying to pinpoint the time frame.
So high school, I was going to shows in high school. In high school, I was going to shows, but a lot of them were, I guess my early years in high school, I was sneaking into the city and going to bigger hardcore shows, like going to Roseland and seeing like Biohazard or Stick of It All.
Yeah.
And then by junior year, I was doing like ABC No Rio and Coney Island High and seeing smaller underground shows. When I started my like first year of college, I started really doing Dillinger. So again, it's weird, but I was already older. Like Dillinger is been around a long time, but I mean, I'm pretty old, I guess, because I had already started college before Dillinger even started, which is odd to some people because like we put out our first music in 1997.
But like leading up to that, because you were in Arcane prior to
Yeah.
that. But I also did an interview recently with Matt Molnar from Uprise,
Yeah.
and you
You
had
know what? I
played.
was listening. I listened to some of that. Yeah, I did hear that. That was, yeah.
The funniest part of that, and Matt's probably gonna kill me for this because he was embarrassed by it. But so you were playing guitar with them for like a minute, and do you remember the story? He said because he was a young guy at that time, and he said, you were older and you were driving to the show or something. He said he looked at you and he was like, "Hey man, do you think you can X up for the show?" Do you remember this?
Hmm.
Do you remember that
I
story?
don't.
He
But
said he
tell me,
was like
go
he
back
just
to me.
basically said he asked you and you were like, "No." He was like, "Okay," and he's like, "I feel like such an idiot afterwards," but
And you know what? I was straight edge technically too, but I
yeah.
was just like, no, I'm not. I'm not part of that. You know. But I think I do remember.
Yeah, he was just really funny because it's like he's like, yeah, Ben had went on to Dillinger, and he's like, I'm asking him to X up, and he's like, I just feel like a fucking idiot afterwards. I was like, yeah, I'm sure I'll never interview him and ask him that, so it'll be fine.
Well, I mean, it was funny. I mean, look, that Matt was one of these kids who was, I always felt like he was super proactive. I mean, the
Yeah,
dude decided he's like, it's kind of thing where like bought a 7 inch, shaved his head, put X's on, and had a band like the next day. And
yeah,
so I always looked at again because he was younger, and I kind of saw that I always looked at him as that guy who bought a 7 inch, put an X on his hand, started a band the next day, singing straight edge songs. But truthfully, he stuck with it and like was really proactive and really like a really important part of the scene. He was
oh
doing
yeah,
zines, he was doing interviews, he was really he lived it for real. And so it's hard when you kind of see someone at the first stages. It's not really fair, you know.
yeah. It's kind of funny too because you figure at that age you're really looking for something, and then you find it. It's like you're gonna go
Yeah,
all in, and then people are like, wait a minute, yesterday you looked like this. I mean, I think a lot of that. Me and my friends were kind of like that. There was
yeah,
sometimes it wasn't a slow progression. It was just you were in school like this one day and you came like this the other day, and
right.
everyone's like,
Which
"What
is
the fuck are
probably
you thinking?"
everybody to some degree, right? I
Yeah,
mean, I'm an oddity because I've been the same guy since junior high as I am now, and the only difference is I had long hair at one point and I cut it. Otherwise, I dress the same. I'm still just wearing a flannel. I still like. It's just I'm the rarity. I still don't like drink and do drugs. Like I'm just I have the same exact friends still. Like I
it's
never
awesome.
moved to LA or like. Um, so I'm an oddity. I'm not normal. But yeah, everybody has that. Not everybody has a cooler older brother or sister that could slowly introduce them to cool stuff. Sometimes they have to like, be thrown into the fire. But I do remember doing Uprise. I was friends with the drummer Steve Larger. And me and him were jamming and doing some music together. And then he was playing drums in Uprise. They needed a guitar player, so I did some shows. I remember my friend Tom, who was kind of like the sixth member of Dillinger, a guy who didn't play music, but like helped us, managed us, knew about the scene, helped push us to people, tour manager guy. I remember him coming to see Uprise and him calling out metal songs in the middle and me playing them in the middle of the Uprise song. So like we'd be playing Uprise and he'd be like Slayer and I'd be like dun, 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 dun. Like I was a dick. Like I actually now feel bad about it. Like I just didn't take it seriously. But at the end of the day, like those kids were all really amazing, all proactive as hell, really into the scene. I do think that they were doing cool stuff.
It's just wild talking to everybody from that whole time period and see it like just it's funny to like it now. Like I'm 40, and so to go back and remember that. I mean, those are just such formative years where you're just trying to figure things out. But like but it's cool to see the kids who were like 15, 16, 17 years old really doing some cool shit like that and just like creating this thing, which I brought up so many times. It's like we were just kids making something like this, like I don't know what the fuck, the scene or whatever it was, but it's just wild, like that, just being proactive like that at that age, it's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. So like
It is. Ultimately, those are the kind of people who do really cool stuff moving forward. Like people who learn how to be self-sufficient and just take their passion and make stuff. And I always trust people from the scene more than I trust people who weren't.
Yeah, it's like they kind of put in the effort instead of saying everything's gonna be given to me or I'm just gonna follow this path. They're like, I think I'm gonna try something different and maybe do some shit on my own and kind of learn what I want to do. It seems like you went in because I mean, all these interviews, it's almost have been putting these pieces together without even, without going or like trying to do this because your name has come up sometimes. So it's like you're in high school, you're playing guitar, you're in Uprise, you're in all these bands. So it seems like you were kind of just jumping around. But do you feel like you had the idea of what you wanted? Because as soon as you got to Dillinger, I mean, it's clear as day that like that's what you were looking to do. But like leading up to that, did you kind of have this vision in your head, or was it a feeling that you were just going towards something that you were hopefully going to figure out?
Man, I think everybody's first attempt at a band is just really a poor version of the stuff they're listening to or their favorite band. So I think I just knew that I wanted to do music that was really obnoxious, and I wanted to do music that was just challenging and polarizing.
Why though? Why was that a thing for you?
Because I didn't think I could make it. I didn't think I could actually make a career out of it.
Wow.
So I thought I would be really way cooler to create something that didn't exist, even if it didn't appeal to a large amount of people. So again, that's why probably in high school and stuff like that, I was making bands that I thought people wanted to hear and didn't go anywhere. And then by the time I got to college and decided I'm going to go to school and have a career, normal career, now I can just make music that's kind of interesting to me. And again, that's when it started to work, really, because it was honest and it was different.
So like, and I've been saying this wrong the whole time. So it's as Arcane. I've been saying Arcane.
Arcane. It was Arcane.
Oh, okay. I'm on Wikipedia too now, and they wrote that. All right, fuck you, Wikipedia. But so you basically like you finally got Arcane. You guys figured it out, but then there was like something I read or heard you were kind of sick of following this specific, like the typical structure of songwriting. And you were like, it was some video some guy did, or he was doing, this guy from like Sweden or something did a video on you. And he's like, let's flip this upside down and just try to make it where it's not so digestible. And like you kind of presented that to the band. Is that true? Or was it like a kind of a group conversation where you guys are like, fuck this?
Man, I think we were, myself and Chris Pennie, our original drummer, really were the backbone. And we were both into some, like, I think I was into more noisy kind of punk stuff. And while he had started getting into the scene and like some of the bands like Snapcase or something like that, he was coming from a more technical background. He had a drum set with like 14 splash cymbals and a rack and like, you know what I mean? 2 kick drums and 7 toms. And like, I was like all these little bells and whistles. And I was just like, kind of like, I didn't really practice guitar. I wasn't like learning Steve Vai songs and stuff like that. I just like to make bands. I like to make music. I like to jam. I like to try and play shows. I was more the scene guy. I was the guy who would get a job at Kinko's so that I can make flyers. I was the guy who networked more and talked to people and enjoyed meeting people. And then Chris was the guy who sat in his basement just playing all the time. I think we both needed each other because he pushed me into a more technical direction. And then I think I pushed him to get out of the basement and actually use his skills somewhere. I remember him just influencing me, him and some of the guys he played with, being like taking things to the next level from a technical standpoint, and me being really inspired by it. But then me also kind of influencing him to like, all right, let's get rid of some splash cymbals. Let's get rid of get rid of that kick drum and that rack, and like let's just start beating some shit up. He was a very angry dude, and it wasn't that hard to like pull that out of him. So I think the combination created really the Dillinger sound. And then on top of that, we got really bored really quick. we really only in the beginning would focus on 3 songs at a time. We never thought the idea of like, we didn't have a label. We never thought we'd be making CDs. So we made like 3 songs at a time that were pretty much probably as much effort as people would put into like 4 albums, because we just really, really wanted to push things and try things and push each other. And then then people started to hear it and we're like, ah, shit. Now people expect that. We have to make a full album of this. How do you do that? You know, I literally just put every idea I've had for 6 years in 2 songs, you know?
You're like, this shit was really fucking technical and I have to do this like 10 more times.
Yeah, I could not play that stuff. Like I always wrote stuff I couldn't play. And that's really was how I got better at guitar, like having to step up and like play it.
Did you just kind of like just start playing and then just go into a fucking zone and just all of a sudden space out and just let your fingers just, because you just like riff, you just shred. So like, how did you get to that point?
It's weird. Honestly, well, there's a couple things. One, we had after our first EP, the self-titled EP, which was, you know, had some technical moments and definitely had a Dillinger thing going on. We brought on this guy, John Fulton, who was played guitar with Chris in a band previous that was much more technical. It was like death metal, technical, riffy, you know, leads. And then we also had Adam. The bass player from that band was in Dillinger as well. So it was basically Chris's tech band. And then me and Dimitri, who were friends from high school, joined that in a way. But I kind of took the lead and was like starting to push them into a more of a punk and aggressive and noisy and visceral direction. I definitely was the one creating, you know, trying to push things into weird rhythms and timings and things like that. But I wasn't like a lead guy. I couldn't shred. I came from blues and punk. Like I would be playing, you know, blues stuff and things like that. I wasn't like sweeping and doing all kinds of stuff. But that guy, John, would like sit there with like books and instructional videos and things like that and kind of show me what he was learning. And then I'd be like, huh. And I'd take it and start making ideas and riffs out of it. Then he left the band. Adam got in a car accident, and it was pretty much me to do all the music. And so I was like, man, I'm not the technical guy. Adam and John were the technical guys. And now I have to do our first full length, and everyone expects it to be next level of what we were doing. And it was horrifying. And I just kind of just was like, I just got to get better. Like I can come up with the ideas, but I need to be able to sit there and like play like that, you know? So I had to play bass, I had to play guitar, I had to really just push myself. So
Jesus,
again, I was good at writing the music. I just wasn't like a technical player, you know. Pulling it off was not so easy for me. So I had to like rise to the occasion, really. And when we did Calculating Infinity, our first album, we didn't have computers. We weren't like cutting and pasting. We recorded that to tape.
Yeah, that's all ADAT, right?
That was all tape machine.
Oh shit!
Like actual reel to reel. So I have the reels in my house, you know. It's like there was no editing and like we just had to play it. So man, I just had to do it. I had to rise to the occasion. And after that album, not only did my confidence rise a lot, but my abilities, you know, were much more advanced.
So basically, like, but you recorded that album? You did the bass and guitars on that whole album?
Yeah, like our producer Steve Evetts was a bass player, so he could do some of it. But like, yeah, I pretty much had to do everything. I played all the guitars, I played all the bass, Yeah, it was scary. It was scary.
So leading up to that though, because I want to just kind of just paint that picture for people, like, because the majority of people are listening from Jersey. So like you guys started Dillinger. Did you guys play out? Like, because you said you would just do like 3 songs at a time or whatever. Did you guys actually play shows, or did you just go right into record? Like, I don't know how you go into recording too, because that was on Relapse, right? The full length.
Yeah. So we had a 3-song EP on Relapse, and then we had the full length on Relapse. And the 3-song EP was already recorded and finished before we signed to Relapse, and we kind of just gave them that as like an act of goodwill. Like, here, this is done. We recorded it. We paid for it.
Oh wow!
Put it out, and they did that, and then the full length was our first proper, I guess, Relapse release.
But how did you like get? So like, how did they find you though?
I think one of the other things that differentiated Dillinger from a lot of the other bands, and probably bands still, was that we really had given up on making it. Like, we didn't think you could. Our goals were just to like play in front of 100 people that paired. When we were playing shows, we would play anywhere. Anywhere we could play, we'd play. It was our way of venting on the weekend after school and work and things like that. So we'd play in an auto body shop. We'd play in VFW halls. We'd play in basements. We played in Jeff Rickley's basement, coffee houses, wherever we could. And our goal was just to enjoy it and have cathartic free expression. And we were mad. We were pissed off. We weren't really cool. We weren't part of the scene. Nobody who was part of the scene gave us the time of day. I literally saw it. I remember giving the Dillinger demo to somebody who, I'm not even going to mention their name, but you'd know who it was. Okay. He was a prominent label guy and this local guy, and watching him throw it in the garbage,
Holy shit.
So
I mean, you guys, like, I remember when I first heard Calculating Infinity, like, I was a fan. I was in the punk scene and, like, listened to punk music, but I liked harder stuff. So I remember when I read a zine in, like, 96, wow. I think it was 96 or 97, and I remember it was an article in Coalesce, and then I bought that album, and then I got Cave In. Until Your Lungs Stop, or Heart Stops.
Heart Stops, yep.
So I bought that because I was like, oh man, these guys are like young dudes making this shit. And that shit blew me away. And then I remember hearing your guys' CD. I was like, this is way fucking beyond any of that shit I've listened to. Because the other stuff was like slower and hard, and it was like, sure, like there's that voice that's present that's like screaming, or it's like deep, like Coalesce. His voice is just this growl, but then there's Converge, where that guy's just high pitched throat the whole time.
Right.
And then you guys come in and I hear this like fucking crazy like this shrieking guitar like that sounds like it's a fucking synth or something, like and I'm like, what the fuck? But it was amazing. But like Thanks. I can imagine how even in that time there was like, but then you'd also in that scene it was, we were coming out of the SoCal thing where that had been established. Then people were breaking off, and then it was like Get Up Kids are coming around, and then there's emo, and Jimmy Eat World's got Static Prevails, and like they're playing at fucking Skaters Worlds in Wayne, And actually, did you go to any of those shows, the Skaters World?
Yeah, totally.
Do you remember any of those? I'm kind of jumping around, but I want to.
Well, I mean, I remember I think we played one of those, but we were. I mean, I remember all the like. Princeton Arts Councils and like just all those shows, and the thing that was so cool about the shows back then is you would see a Get Up Kids and a Coalesce play the same show. Like you would see Lifetime and Unbroken, together. And I loved that. I loved that. And it didn't seem weird. It didn't seem wrong. It sounded like, these are all scene bands. The genre of music wasn't as important as the ethic and like where they were coming from back then. It wasn't, the real life playlist was just like a bunch of bands that played a VFW hall, not like, okay, this is a genre.
Yeah, it was like a stew of just fucking sound.
It really was, man. I loved it. Like, it really was so mixed, and it didn't seem weird at all. It wasn't odd to have like what would be considered an emo pop punk band play with a really heavy band or whatever. So,
well, I've talked about a bunch of times about how Weston was always that band that could like sneak on. It was like Weston, and then it was Adam and his Package. Like these are bands that could just be on a bill. But I don't think out of all the mixes, I don't think I could ever see like a Dillinger show with like, with Weston opening up or like vice versa. But back then, like you,
but we did. We played shows with like Piebald all the time. And
did you really?
Yeah, and like even
holy shit.
Yeah, we played shows with all those kind of bands.
Actually, I just found your the Skaters World video. It's Dillinger Escape Plan to Skaters World, Wayne, 2001. And Folly, they posted it to their I guess their Facebook page. Do you remember those guys? Like hardcore? Yeah.
I'll
have to send you the link. It's amazing. Yeah, there's fucking the stage of Skaters World. That's crazy.
We played with Prima. Remember that band, the Krishna band?
No. Prima.
Okay, they were like pretty much a a young offshoot of like 108 and Shelter and things like that.
Yeah.
But
Was
they
that
were
was
like,
that Daly's like other band, Chris Daly, before
I
he
don't
did
know if
108?
he might have played in Primo for a
I could
second.
be so completely wrong right now, but
But like, yeah, I mean, like who else did we play? I mean, yeah, we'd play with, I don't know, Reggie. We'd play with, and I guess it was like, even though Dillinger was technical and all those things, we were definitely coming from a punk side of things as far as the aesthetic. We wanted to be aggressive and punk and polarizing and obnoxious and stuff like that. It wasn't coming from a safe place of somebody sitting playing scales, like.
yeah.
So I think that's what differentiated us, maybe.
Well, that's what I started to notice in the shows. There'd be all of a sudden these sweatshirts started populating the crowd, like here and there, with the cover artwork for Calculating Infinity, and it was so memorable because what is that picture of in the album? It's like a spark or something.
It was radio tubes for amplifiers. So the tube amplifiers were all the power was run through these like basically light bulbs, and they still are the tube amps, So and they glow, when they get hot, they glow. When you're running them, they glow, and I still use amps like that. But yeah, there were just a lot of photos of those tubes, really.
That started showing up at like Wayne or the Wayne Firehouse or Teaneck or West Orange or some crap. It was like people would be wearing that in the wintertime. And I was like, what is this? Like, oh, it's fucking Dillinger. It was like, that's how we started listening to it. I was like, man, this shit is like next fucking level. But it was also around the same time where bands were starting to do the, like the turtleneck screamo shit. You remember that? And emo all of a sudden became, you were playing emo or you dressed the same and you were playing like this crazy technical shit, and it was. But
well, that was also something that was odd to people because we looked like an emo band. We looked like we were just wearing V-neck sweaters and button downs and had short hair, and we were just like college kids who we looked the same as someone who would be in an emo band or whatever. We just and that was definitely something that made it weird when we'd play in the metal side of things. Most of the relapse bands were like traditional metal bands. We'd play like a metal fest or a relapse stage, and a lot of those bands would look at us like, "What the fuck is this?" Got heckled a lot for that.
You guys had a hell of a career with just like trying to really figure out a way to like plug in. It's like, God, you can't catch a fucking break. Well, I mean, people obviously like listen to it, like, I just remember like reading about Patton, finding out about you guys, and then obviously like recording with you guys. Actually, it's funny. I was talking to Badami. I think it was back then. This was at the time when you guys recorded that album with Patton, and I was like, "What the fuck are those guys like?" He's like, "They're like really quiet emo guys," or like, I was like,
which he had a lot of experience with because he was doing a lot of that stuff.
Oh yeah,
recording, all that kind of stuff. So.
That was like who he was surrounded with, like back then.
Yeah.
How did you guys get hooked up with Evetts? He was all over everyone's album, like Snapcase, Lifetime, fucking Kid Dynamite. Well, Kid Dynamite was after you guys, so.
Yeah, but he was still Kid Dynamite, Dead Guy, all that. He was. Well, I remember during that time there was a lot of bands, and you'd listen to their 7-inches or tapes, whatever, and there was definitely a difference between those and the bands that had like CDs and were on MTV. Like, not that it mattered, but there was a difference in quality for sure. And when you heard the stuff Evetts was doing, it just sounded professional. Like it sounded like a real recording. That's all I knew. Like I'd listen to Dead Guy or Snapcase and I'd be like, this is like pristine sounding. Sounds really good. It doesn't sound like something recorded on a 4-track. So it's interesting. I think about a lot about bands and their trajectory and the dots, how you connect the dots to where they came from. You can do it with Nirvana really easy. Like Kurt Cobain was friends with Buzz from the Melvins. He was a Melvins fan, started a band, found out where all the bands he liked, like the Melvins and other sub pop bands were recording, made an appointment, went there because that's where the bands he liked was recording, then made a 7-inch. Then the guy who recorded them was really close with the sub pop guys because he was doing all their stuff and said, hey, check this out. Maybe you want to work with them. They said, okay, they did a 7-inch, and you could just connect it. And that was really what happened with us. We We liked the bands he was doing. I found the number. I called. I said, I'd like to request some time with this guy, Steve, because his name was on the CDs. Put us in the book, and there you go. Rest is history. We worked with him up until this last album we just did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We worked with him on every release we ever did, including the Badami one. He mixed it.
Yeah, why did you guys go with Badami for the second album? Not questioning Chris, but like, why did you guys break from Steve and go to Chris?
So it was a situation like, I had produced something like a friend's band, and Chris was the engineer. So I met him there, and he was very local and I liked working with him. He was easy to hang with and work with. And then when we were in between singers and we started working on that next batch of like 3 songs, like I said, we'd do like 3 songs at a time. We ended up talking to Patton and saying like, hey, while we're looking for singers, why don't we maybe do an EP together? And because we had discussed doing something together when we toured with Mr. Brungle, and this seemed like a good opportunity. We were between singers. He had some downtime. So he's like, if you send me the songs and they speak to me, like, let's do it. I don't know if it'll be in my wheelhouse, but like, yeah, let's give it a go. So we went to Chris to just make good demos. Really? We're like, let's go and like just book a day or 2 and record good demos, because we can't send Patton like a cassette tape, from a boombox,
Yeah.
So, and we went in and we like recorded, and then we sent, I dropped off a CD of those demos with Mike. Then he came back and recorded all these kind of like blip blops phrasings. He didn't have real words, but he had vocal patterns and things like that, and getting back to me. And I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Jesus.
And then I was like, you know what? Like, we're kind of half done with this. Like, let's just keep doing it. Let's go and finish a few parts and get Patton in there, and then we'll mix it. And why reinvent the wheel? We already started doing this, and it sounds pretty good. So fuck it.
So there's a couple things there. Like, one, did you feel like it was kind of maybe work against you that you guys had already established the band, you had your singer, that Dimitri left, and then you're like, well, we have this downtime. Well, not downtime, but we're in this kind of like, we got to get a new singer, but you're going to have Mike come in and sing. But even though that potentially could mean that you weren't going to be able to do the band full time with him, did you guys kind of question, like, is this a good idea? I mean, in retrospect, you're like, yeah, obviously it's a great fucking idea because Mike Patton's going to be doing vocals, right. But that could easily fuck you though in the long run.
Well, I didn't look at it that way because, like, we knew he wasn't going to be able to be the singer. We knew that he had a billion projects, and we were a full-time band. We didn't want to be one of his 7 bands, and so we knew pretty quickly that we weren't going to even attempt to make him our full-time singer. What it did do was give us an opportunity to expand on our creative horizons outside of what was just typical of underground music or hardcore or metal, and have somebody who has a license to do whatever the fuck he wants sing on our music. So that way, once Mike Patton does vocals on your music, you're pretty much going to have everything, including the kitchen sink, over your music. And that enabled us to then find a singer that was more diverse, that could do more than just scream, and in a way that's like a little more organic, instead of like being like, now they're trying to be commercial. No, we just want to like have more of a creative palette, and nobody could do that better than Patton. So it just raised the bar for who we were going to get next, and it also laid the groundwork for people accepting more diverse vocals.
Did you find when you were asking him to like do the vocals and you're pushing it, did you kind of like give yourself a little pushback, like, wait, should I like, fuck, can I ask this guy this question? Or are you past that where you're like, we're friends, like, duh, like, why wouldn't you do this?
As far as like giving instruction, yeah, that was intended.
No, but like just getting him to be like, dude, hey, do you want to sing on this? And then when he does like a little bit, you're like pushing it. You're like, why don't you finish this?
No, I mean, look, it was just like a email or something. It was a conversation like, hey, we got these songs. Any interest? I think I was surprised that he said yes so quickly, for sure. But I wasn't intimidated at that point. We had spent 2 months together touring. We were friendly. I knew he respected what we did because he was so vocal about everything that he didn't respect. It was no secret. It was never a secret that he didn't respect something or like it. And he definitely respected us. So I didn't feel intimidated to just throw it out there.
What were the tours like? I'm kind of jumping around, but like when you guys started going on the road and touring, were you guys just going out like months at a time, or were you doing like a couple weeks, taking a big break, going to school, going out again?
Right. Well, it started just a couple weeks here and there because we were going to school, we were working, things like that. And then we signed to Relapse, and the Weekend Warrior thing became less realistic because opportunities started happening. They were getting us on tours and shows with some of their other artists. There were bands that kind of respected us more because we were on this label that was like a legitimate, real label. That was kind of like a cool thing in that time. There weren't many bands that were signing to a label like Relapse in our scene. People thought it was like, that was like a next level. It wasn't some dude with his own label. It was like an actual real label.
That was a big fucking label then, though. I mean, I remember just thinking that same thing. I was like, that's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, it was definitely a big thing. I remember a lot of bands being like Conversional and being like, what the fuck? Like, like how do these guys do that? Opportunities started coming, and I started to have to take off work more and more. Our drummer, who was going to Berkeley, quit and came home because he was like, man, I'm trying to make bands out in Boston with all these like music nerds, and I have more chemistry and more going on with these dudes in Marstown, who aren't in music school, and I remember him saying like, yeah, we get in a room and everyone's just shredding. There's no music, at Berkeley.
I was gonna say it was, but you guys had like a structure with the mat.
Yeah, we just get in the basement and start working and jamming and making ideas, and we were really productive. So eventually we just had to quit what we were doing because the opportunities outweighed everything. And it was hard because we had to sacrifice things financially a great deal, because while the band was very active, we certainly weren't making the money we could if we just worked a job. We had to quit our jobs in order to take those opportunities. It was hard. We didn't get hotels or have anything like that. We drove a van with no seats in it, but sleep in the van, sleep on benches at a Walmart, and eat peanut butter and jelly, and live with our parents for way longer than we should have. And just, we did what we had to do. But then once we committed to doing the band full time, we would be touring months and months and months.
I can imagine. So like I was in a band, a Jersey band, and we did a couple tours, like a handful of tours. And I remember we'd pull up into a show and get on stage, and we were like a pop punk band. And
what was the band?
It was called Lanemeyer.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would just show up and be like, we don't have a place to stay. Can anyone put us up? And then at the end, we'd have like 3 kids come up to us and be like, you gotta stay with us. You gotta stay with us. Did you guys find, because your stage show is fucking insane. And did you find that people were intimidated? Like, I don't think I want these guys staying with us. Or people were like, dude, that was fucking awesome. Like, you gotta crash in my place.
Oh,
I can imagine the intimidation where someone's like, are they gonna do that to my house?
You know what? It was, we definitely got the weirdos. That's the thing. Like, we got the weirdos who thought we were cool and like wanted to keep us up all night playing us weird, rare demos, and like thought we were just wanted to be like clowning around all night. They're troublemakers, So we definitely didn't get the nice college kid who was like, or like the person whose mom would get you bagels in the morning. We'd get some weirdo, like crazy person that would just be stoked to have the crazy band in their house, and we'd just be exhausted. And I remember so many times just being like falling asleep sitting there while these people would just like play us demos of rare Mr. Bungle stuff, or weird death metal bands, or showing us like videos of Faces of Death, be like, check out this murder, and we just being like, I just want to sleep. I just want to sleep. We have to start driving in 4 hours, So,
oh my God.
So yeah, and we definitely got the places to sleep, but they definitely weren't the most desirable. I remember there were times when we first started doing shows where I was booking the shows out of a pizza place, payphone. We would have 4 days in between shows sometimes. Like, it was that bad. So we would be staying at someone's house for like 4 days in Seattle or no, sorry, like in Syracuse or something. We'd be like, it's
Oh my God, that's fucking murder.
Totally. We'd just live at people's houses.
Did you guys have a booking agent at this point, or like how quickly did you guys get a booking agent after calculating?
We did a couple short runs on our own, like a week here, 2 weeks there, East Coast things on our own, where we would just book through message boards and things like that. And then we kind of adopted Cave In and Converge's booking agent because we were touring with them. So this guy Matt Pike was booking basically like the Hydra head bands like Botch and Cave In and stuff like that. And we started touring with those bands. So he was like just by default booking us because he was booking them and we were on the tour. And then he kind of just continued working with us on some of our own tours for a while.
So did you find that like being on tour with these bands kind of pushed you guys a bit more, where you kind of went out, like, did you, not a competition, but did you find, because you guys are intense bands, like, Cave In and Converge and all that, like, did you find that almost like you didn't, like, not try to one up each other, but that kind of pushed you to getting more, like, you're improving your stage show?
Oh yeah, there was definitely a healthy competition with those bands. It was great because before that we were so angry and so pissed. We were such outcasts. We were just straight competitive. Like, we went on stage or wherever we were playing with one goal, to just destroy the place and walk out, like, straight up, just come to a town, destroy it, and ride out like cowboys in the sunset. Like, fuck off. We had no interest in making friends. We had no interest in any of that stuff. And then when we started touring with Converge and Jesuit and Botch and Cave In, like, we were much more like-minded with these people. They were all outcasts too, who really just liked music and found the hardcore scene a great place, had a great opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
There was a difference. There was the bands that just wanted to be in a hardcore band and they just learned 3 chords and it was like, okay, you play bass, you play drums, and they'd just talk more than they'd play in between songs about politics or veganism or whatever they felt would get them a fan base at the time. And then there were the bands that like just loved music and saw, wow, this DIY thing is an opportunity for us to do it without having to worry about labels or some shady club owner making you pay to play or whatever. And that's who we all were, like Botch. And we were people who just really loved music, loved the opportunity. So when we found that group of people, it definitely changed. It became a healthy competition where like we really enjoyed each other's shows, but it also pushed us to do better.
I can imagine. Just to kind of just speed it up because I know you're gonna jump off. But did you, because you guys were a band for what, like 20 years basically? It was like 97,
20 years.
2017. Was there any point where you were like on stage where you're just getting fucking exhausted, or did you kind of keep up with it the whole time?
I was exhausted. Mentally, physically. I was like managing the band mostly and doing most of the work and writing most of the music and, eventually even at the end being the label. And I was also older than the other guys. I was in the band longer than anybody. I was in the band during the harder years. Not that it wasn't hard, but like I said, in the time when we were sleeping on floors and buying all our own gear and eating peanut butter every day. And, by the time the band ended, not really anyone in the band had really done most of that. I'm not saying I worked harder, but I definitely was burnt,
Well, the time's going to burn you out. I mean, just because someone comes in new, they're going to be a lot more fresh and doesn't take away, you're not taking away from them that you lived all that stuff, but you're kind of like, it's going to be a lot more exciting for them where you're going to like, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was mentally exhausting too. I mean, 20 years of being just Guy from Dillinger Escape Plan, literally, wore on you because when you got home from all this touring and things like that, you were nobody. If you weren't doing the band or you weren't active, you had nothing. You had no family. You had no base. Your friends had moved away. You missed weddings and funerals, and your friends have kids and jobs, and you're just sitting at home like, anybody want to have lunch? No, we work. Like, yeah, it got hard because when the band becomes your financial, your job and the way you pay all your bills, and everybody in the band who wasn't necessarily part of the band when you first started for only the reason of having fun has different values and ethics and like principles and lifestyles and geographic locations and all those things. It just becomes very draining.
Yeah.
And I just had made the decision. I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. I always felt like 20 years, if this band made it 20 years, it would be insane. So that was kind of the Dillinger Escape Plan in a way. 20 years of making music that I feel was totally uncompromising and I was proud of, would be a success. And I realized, I was like, it's going to be 20 years. It's going to be 20 years. I feel I'm not really happy. I love Dillinger. I love our fans, but I need a change in my life. I need to be just Ben, not Guy and Dillinger. I need to try that. And I just decided, I called the guys. I was like, you know what? I think this is it. This is it. Like, this is the last album. This is the last touring cycle. And we need to do as much as we can until 2017. And then 20 years, boom. And it hit everyone pretty hard because no one expected it. Everyone was kind of like, didn't get it at first. And then they're like, why don't we just slow down? Converge does like 2 weeks at a time. Why don't we do that? And you can do your other things. And I was like, no, Dillinger doesn't roll that way. You can't keep a toe in. You go all in or you don't. And then I think as everyone started to think about it, the artistic integrity of like going out on top and totally in control, not because you're fighting, not because no one's come to the shows, not because like literally you made the decision. You did 20 years of music that all concluded in a positive, good way. And that's it. And so it was just very empowering.
Yeah, it's very like it was like Sting and the Police, where he's
Right.
like, go out on top, man, or just go out where you're like, yeah, you're not like this is caused by some internal riff or we just can't fucking do this, even though like you were like, I think I'm just done. And now it's kind of crazy that you go from that and then you're
Yeah.
on the farm doing something totally different, where it almost sounds like you kind of almost like went from, like you're saying, not having an identity to having
and a lot of people think all the stuff I have going on now was why I ended the band or why we stopped, because I had too much going on, and that's not true at all. Everything I'm doing now happened after that decision, after we announced it. So I met my wife, we got pregnant, I started managing an artist I really respected, who came to me and asked me to do it. I started working on other projects. The farm fell in my lap. Draft Tongue Orchestra finally, took shape. All that stuff happened after the announcement to end the band happened. I had no idea what the future held for me. I had no idea how I'd make money. I had no idea what I'd do next. So it really was like, this door just needs to close in order to see what the future holds.
That's wild, dude. Well, just a couple things before we go. One, I loved the basement show that you guys did in 2009 after playing in the city. You guys did like...
You there?
No, I was like, again, in the research, I saw the video and I loved the part where you were like, yeah, there was like Greg and I think the drummer or someone in the band. You're like, these guys they came in when we were playing big venues, so they were like blown away by this basement show. When I saw that, I was like, oh man, like you totally, yeah, like because I already like knew you were embedded in the scene, but like to see that and you're like, yeah, it's like growing up and like going out in the city and bringing someone back home and be like, this is the best fucking hole in the wall spot you got to get food at, but it's like this is the best hole in the wall place you got to fucking play a show at.
Totally.
I thought that was
it was interesting. It was definitely kind of the thing where like I was used to, as you were, we're the same age around, and like we were coming from the same place, and you'd play those shows and then you'd sit on the couch and hang out with everyone until you played, and you'd eat with them and whatever and like hang out. You weren't in a tour bus or backstage in a green room. You were just everyone was kind of equal. At most, you were kind of cool, the cooler dude in the room. At most, that's it, because you were in the band. But there really wasn't a difference between you and everyone else. And that was definitely weird. It was weird for Greg. He kind of hung out in the tour bus. It was a lot of anxiety just being in the mix like that. But which I get. But it was something that really spoke to me. And when we started, the best time in the band was those early times when everything was new. We were hitting all these new rites of passages. Everything was exciting. Everything was hard. Everything was because you loved it, not because you had to pay a bill or something. And that's the time I remember the most. And that's the time I definitely enjoyed the most.
I just want to sneak this in here, and I am going to end this. Did you have like a favorite local Jersey band that you were like a big fan of back then?
Dead Guy was huge for me. They were a Jersey band.
Yeah, I just want to throw that there for like the Jersey people listening.
But dude, I think, at the time it was so cool because there was all these bands that would just tour and drive around, and I was into all these bands, not just Jersey bands, like Bloodlet from Florida and Unbroken from California, and Snapcase from Buffalo. But Dead Guy was huge. Lifetime I loved. Those were some of the Jersey bands I dug.
Well, what do you want to plug before I ask the last question?
What do I want to plug? Let's see. Well, I think, I'm working on stuff, but it's all kind of stuff that's not ready to be announced or ready. But I think, check out Suicidal Tendencies if you haven't. And once things get moving, come to a show, because playing with those guys, Mike Muir, the singer, is in his like 50s, upper 50s. He's been around forever. He's a legend, and he's still so passionate. Everything he says on that mic, he believes, and he has more energy than anybody I know combined in a band. So I think I'd love for people to check out that band, younger kids who maybe hadn't heard them or had a chance to see them.
Cool, man. All right, so last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
What scene ethics? I think that you do things you care about and that you're passionate about, and then it'll work out for you. People, I think I learned how to survive, how to monetize my career by doing things that people believe are honest. So I noticed that when I was playing in the scene and everything was, in the early days, it was the bands that you felt really believed what they were saying and believe what they were doing on stage that everyone fell in love with and would buy every shirt and would buy every vinyl and would buy and to this day, I know that if I'm not doing something I really believe in, then it's not going to be valuable to people. So that's really what I took. That was the most important thing I took from it.